Hello and welcome to DIY Data 5. I'm your host, Michael Urig. Today is June 26, 2021, and this is episode 25, Fog of War. Today I'm going to talk about the things that really matter when it comes to making sure we know what's going to be happening while we're doing a DIY project. And also kind of the same concept when it comes to parenting and making sure we know what's going on pretty much the entire time we have children. It kind of applies a little bit as an adult when we have children as well, and they've grown up because we don't want to be blindsided when our children are over during, Thanksgiving or whatever. But it's the concept of situational awareness. So the title, Fog of War. For those of you who have been in the military or watched military movies or read military books, the idea of the fog of war is when you really kind of lose sight of what's happening because of what's going on in a war or in a battle. Things are just going wrong, or you just don't know what's going on because this is happening here, that's happening over there. You don't know what's happening behind you because of all the noise, the ruckus, and just a lot's happening to really make you lose focus, and things can just go wrong. And this obviously can happen on the DIY side of life, and this can most definitely happen on the parenting side of life. So I really want to take time right now to discuss some of the things we can do on the DIY side of being a person and the side of being a parenting when it comes to situational awareness and making sure we are taking this into consideration in our day-to-day lives in these two areas because, hey, this is DIY and Dad podcast. I'm doing this now, even though originally this podcast was going to be something completely different, and because today, I had this content planned already, but I've bumped it up mostly because I've actually had an incident today where personally I forgot to take stock of what was happening in my own DIY project. So today I received a piece of equipment. It was a small, simple, unmanaged, doesn't matter, switch to redo some of the network in my house. And I was going and I was installing it and I was rerouting cables and all this other stuff. And I didn't maintain situational awareness, or what that really means is looking around to see what's around me, to know what I'm doing isn't going to, cause any harm to things around me or to myself. And I knocked over a glass decoration. So not only, as you can guess, did that get broken, which stunk. It was one of those cylindrical tubes. For those of you who are watching the YouTube, you see me making this motion. For those of you watching or listening to the podcast, you don't see that, but I'm making gestures with my hands, so you don't get to see that. So go to YouTube if you want to see me look funny. And I knocked that over, but in natural instinct, I reached for it and I cut my hand. So again, on YouTube, you can see this nice little incision on the palm of my hand. Looks itty bitty, but it was actually pretty deep. It bled and it hurts like the dickens right now. So because I didn't take situational account into what I was doing before, that's key, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Before I went into my DIY project, I got hurt and I damaged stuff. So I decided, because I obviously base this whole show on my experiences and my blunders, I wanted to bring this whole situation experience into the episode today, take this show and the notes, polish it up, and bring it out to you guys right now. So today we're going to talk about it. I'm going to get into the DIY side first, and then I'll move on to the parenting side, the dad side of it second, because there are a little differences, obviously, between the two and the situational awareness. And hopefully we can clear that fog of war when it comes to DIY and when it comes to dad, and how we can make our lives a little bit better, how we can be a little bit more prepared, so that hopefully we don't have negative experiences because we weren't aware of our situations in either of these realms of our lives. So first, let's get into the DIY side. So first, and this actually goes for both, and I'll repeat it on both, you want to make sure you're taking stock of what you're going to be doing first. Don't go into it and then hope you remember to stop to take account of what's going to happen during the project or during parenting. Think of your day or think of your project before you start the project. Make sure you're going to have the right everything going on. So you want to do situational awareness or situational safety checks before you go into your project. So everything we're going to talk about, make sure you're trying to do this before you start. Okay. So step one, this has to be done before you even start your project. Don't lift up a tool to turn something. Don't start unwrapping packages. Don't lift up your car. Don't cut off the power. Don't do anything until you take a situational awareness stock of your project. Okay. Second, you want to make sure you have all the right safety gear. Okay. One of the mistakes that I made today is I was not wearing gloves. Plain and simple. No gloves, got cut. Okay. I'm making gestures for you watching the podcast. You're not seeing this. Not wearing gloves, got cut. Now, yesterday I was working on my car. Okay. I was changing my oil. Again, I could pay to somebody change my oil. For those of you listening to the past, I've had bad experiences where people really messed up. They admitted to me what they did, but they would have covered it up if I didn't work for the same company. I tend not to trust people changing my oil. I'm still going to do it. I wore gloves working on my own car yesterday. Okay. I know to wear gloves working on my own car because it can be hot, because you would like to have warm oil, all that other stuff. I will wear gloves almost all the time when I'm working on a car, especially underneath it. But for some reason today, I felt like I was just going to be running cables, no big deal. But you know what? I really should have been. I was working in the ceiling. There could be nails. There could be all this other stuff. I should have been making sure I was wearing the right protective gear. I should have been wearing eye protection. I wasn't wearing eye protection. There's a lot of times where we feel like we're so good at what we're doing, or we've done it 100 times, and I wasn't wearing the proper protective gear. So let me tell you, don't think you just don't need it. Get it, wear it. It's going to save you. Okay, even if you mess all the other steps up, at least you've protected yourself. You might have broken something or something else, but you've protected yourself. You, again, if you're not watching YouTube, I'm pointing at myself. Okay, this is a mistake I've just made. I'm reminding myself, I'm reminding you. Wear the proper protective equipment. Because let me tell you, you break something else, really easy to replace that stuff. Even a $2,000 computer is cheaper than trying to, if anything was worse, trying to pay the medical bills to replace a severed finger because I sliced off my finger because of the glass versus just a little itty bitty poke here, which actually could have been a lot worse. But luckily, I was just bleeding for a little bit, and it's just going to hurt for a few days, hopefully. So wear the proper protective gear, okay? Get the proper protective gear. That's number 2. Number 3, make sure you have the proper tools. I've gone and I've said this before. If you have the proper tools, it's going to make the job a lot easier. Now, I had all the proper tools. All the equipment was already pre-made, so I didn't need anything to crimp or make or any of that other stuff, so I didn't have to jury rig anything for what I was doing. So that I didn't have to take into consideration. The next thing, number 4, is you want to make sure your work area is properly cleaned, cleared, and well lit. Obviously, when it comes to lighting, this is as best as you can get it. If you're working in a small area and you can't fit a light there, it's going to be a little harder. So you want to make sure you take your time in those kinds of situations as best as you can. So this is where you're about to get into the project. You want to look around. You want to make sure you've cleared the area as best as possible. Obviously, in some situations, you might not be able to clear certain things because you have to work around it because it's either too heavy, it's hard fixed or installed into the area and you can't remove it. Those are the kinds of situations you have to take stock of, but then you also have to mentally prepare yourself and work a plan to get around that kind of stuff. So this is where you're becoming situationally aware of the things that you have to be concerned about. Like obviously, if you're running up in a ceiling, you got to be aware, okay, I'm working up in the ceiling, I see screws, I see nails, those kinds of things. This is where you start taking a look at the area. Now, if there's just stuff that doesn't need to be there, move it. Take the time. Don't just think, oh, I'll be careful or anything like that. Move the stuff. Take the time, okay? Don't do what I did and just jump headlong because you got a package in the in the mail, and you're like, oh, I'll just do this real quick. It won't take any time at all. And next thing you know, you broke something, you spilled something, gets all over the place, and you're spending more time cleaning up the mess than it would have taken you to just move it and get the project done the right way and not get hurt. Finally, the biggest thing is once you've taken stock, you moved everything out, you've gotten the right gear on, you've done this before the project, okay? Run through the project dry, okay? Don't just do it in your head. Don't just close your eyes and think of the project. Literally do it dry. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, walk it. I'm going to do this, walk it. I'm going to do this, walk it. And literally bend down, bend up, reach over, reach around, but go slow. Not like ridiculously slow, but go slow. Because as you're moving your body up, down, left, right, moving, looking around, you're probably going to see something or brush against something that you're like, oh, that could have stunk if I hit this, or oh, I might need this so that I don't get hurt or so I don't break this or damage that. Okay, so doing a dry run will help you see something you may have missed. Okay, so again, you want to make sure you do a full situational check before you start the project. So all of this is before. Don't open packages. Don't start running anything. Don't turn off power. Don't jack up your car. Don't call up your buddy and ask him to come over to help you. Don't do anything until you've done this situational check. Okay? Second, you want to make sure you have the right safety equipment, safety tools, protective gear, all of that available to you and ready to put on. Don't say, oh, I got gloves in my toolbox. I'll get them when I need them. Get them out. Put them with all the other equipment that you're going to need for this project. Okay, don't think you'll get it because then you might think, oh, I don't need it, or you'll be too lazy to go get it, or something else. Okay? Next, you want to go and just survey the area, every area you're going to work. Make sure if you can get it out of the way and it's something breakable or something that can hurt you or it's just going to be a pain in the butt, honestly, move it out of the way. Get it out of there so you don't have to worry about damaging it damaging you, or just being in the way and slowing you down. It's okay to move it out of the way and move it back. It'll probably save you time in the long run. And then finally, you want to do a dry run of the whole project. Again, go slow, move through it as if you're going to do it. You're not running any cables, you're not turning off any power yet or anything like that. You're just kind of slowly going through what you're going to do, where you're going to put things, that kind of stuff. If you're going to, do something on the car, you're going to go through your head, okay, I'm going to take this up, jack this up here, move this here, I got to do this, I got to do that. Make sure you got blocks for your tires, make sure you got the proper jack and lifts and that kind of stuff. You want to go through the whole project as if you're going to do it. This will help you overcome any issues you might have when it comes to safety, and issues you might have with not having the right tools too. You might be going through, it's like, oh, I forgot I need this wrench, or I need this screwdriver, or I need this hammer, or I might need this saw, or whatever it is when it comes to the project. This is for situational awareness that you're running through it, but it might help you catch some other things as well. So on the parenting side, situational awareness is for every parent really a 24/7, 8-day-a-week thing. Yeah, I know, whatever. We have to be situational aware all the time. And this is really why parents are always tired. You don't have to tell us that we look tired. You don't tell us we should take a nap. We know. We've known it from a month before we found out our wives were pregnant all the way through when we die. I mean, we can go to heaven and we'll still be tired because we're still parents. Angels don't sleep because we have kids. It's just the way it is. So being situationally aware is just a natural state of things. That doesn't mean we're the best at it. We can get better, we can practice, and there's tools, tips, tricks, and things like that we can utilize for it. So what I want to talk today about are some of the things that we have used, and some of the things that I've looked at and considered, and why we haven't gone with them versus other things, and what has worked for us, because there's been a lot of situations where I mean come on, dad of 5, 2 parents, so we really have to take this whole concept of being situationally aware really serious if we want to live life. So we've talked to other parents that have multiple kids beyond 2, because when there are 2 parents and you have 2 or less children, the one-on-one does work. It can be difficult, obviously, when there's 1 child or 2 children. And what I'm going to talk about does work for any scenario, but as you start getting into the multiple, you really, really have to pay attention to your children, because I'm sorry, you may have 2 eyes, and you can still only pay attention to really 1 child or 1 area at a time. So here's some of the things that we've done. Here's some of the things we've considered, and here's some of the things that you should really just take a look at and think of for yourself. All right. So first of all, you got to realize you can't be everywhere all at once. All right. So no matter how hard you try, you're going to miss something. All right. We as parents, we've missed things. Luckily, nothing major has come from it. All right. We know many parents that have had significant major issues come up with their children, and it's a horrible tragedy. Our hearts have been there for them in every step of the way, and it can happen to us, and we understand this as parents, and it's a horrible day when it happens to any parent. So no matter what I say, no matter what happens, you need to understand that no matter how hard you try, you've tried. And we pray for every parent out there that nothing ever happens, and we just hope that we all do our best. So just do your best, and you have done your best, and keep that in mind. We have had situations where we've had children choking, we've had children fall downstairs, and miraculously, I've come through the front door at the exact split moment to catch my child before they hit the bottom step. Literally grab them, head literally millimeters from hitting the bottom step. Don't know how that works, but multiple times that's happened. It's that God-given sense to keep me outside just long enough where I walk through the door at just the right time as my wife sees our kid tumbling down the stairs. Because for some reason, they're just doing their own thing, and I'm able to catch them. And this is not just one occasion, or a kid's choking on something, and I just turn around, and I'm just there at the right time to scoop the food right out of their throat with my finger. And this isn't just like cough choking. I mean, dead, no air coming out of them kind of stuff. Things can happen where you can be paying attention, and just the wrong slip, little step off, and something happens. Or, you're looking at them and they're talking perfectly fine, but next, nothing. And you warn them and you talk to them, and they just won't listen. And you got to understand that situational awareness is only so much you can do, but the next best thing is just making sure you're always there. So here's the things that we can do as parents to try and be situationally aware. Now, obviously the biggest thing is being there. Now, this is adult supervision. Obviously, you go to any theme park, you go to any pool, you go to any gym, they say, please, children under the age of blank should not be left unsupervised. Duh. Now, obviously, is it an inconvenience? Yeah. I mean, malls don't want kids under the age of 16 or even 18, especially if they don't have money, being left at the mall. Why? They tend to do things they shouldn't. So they want them supervised. This is called situational awareness. A parent should be with a child. If it's at a pool, probably because they're going to do things they shouldn't because they're young and aren't going to be as wise. And when you're at a theme park, it's because it's a theme park, and a lot of things can happen at a theme park where a child can get injured. So a lot of the times it's just being with the child is a concept of situational awareness. So that's number 1. Being around your children, or having an adult, again, it doesn't have to be you, around the children is step 1 of situational awareness. It could be a grandparent, it can be a family friend, it can be a paid or unpaid babysitter. But anybody who is considered mature enough to take the appropriate actions in an emergency situation. Those are the 2 keys: appropriate action, emergency situation. 1, 2. YouTube, I'm holding up fingers. 1, 2. Appropriate action, emergency situations. These are the 2 guidelines that we need to consider as parents. Okay, we are the parents. We make those decisions when it comes to the guiding principles of who we choose to put in the responsible position for our children. Okay, now that person could be a 15-year-old teenager. It could be a 14-year-old teenager. It could be a 13-year-old teenager. Okay, it might not be grandma or grandpa or Grammy or Grampy or whoever. Okay, we've had some friends that we've talked to that they don't trust their own parents because of lack of responsible behavior from a parent. Okay, because they won't take appropriate action in an emergency situation. Okay, so these are the guidelines when it comes to choosing an adult to be responsible, or choosing an individual to be responsible for a child. All right, so again, being present with the child is the first thing of situational awareness. The second thing, especially when children start getting older and you aren't necessarily with them, so this is more sending your child outside of your purview, so maybe over their friend's house with other adults around, and they're not quite being watched, but they're just in the area, is when we start this concept of electronic surveillance or electronic tethering, I think is what a lot of people like to use as the phrase now. And people like to just say, oh, well, just give them their own cell phone. Well, that kind of opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to situational awareness then, where then you have to be situationally aware of everything on the internet and everything that they do on the internet, everything they do with the cell phone. That's a whole nother podcast, and I'll talk about that another day, or maybe a whole series, because as an IT guy, I have a whole lot to say, obviously, on that subject, and as a dad, maybe. But the idea of electronic tethering has come a long way in technology. There are single type devices where you can actually give it to a child. It's a single call device. It has GPS tracking and things like that. And I do definitely believe there is a market for that if individuals want to consider that. Different cell phone carriers have their own different kinds of things. You can look into that for yourself. Me personally, I know how to take a cell phone and utilize it in such a manner. Obviously, I'm an IT guy, so I can cut it down to just that. And then as they get older, if I decide I need to make it more functional for whatever they are as an older teen or even as a grown adult, I can convert it back to a regular phone. I can do that. But that's me as an IT guy. I'm equipped to do that. But you can go to any major carrier now and probably find one of those family type tethering devices with emergent calling, parent calling, and GPS kind of functions. And these are great, I think, all the way down to, you're allowing them to go ride their bikes farther away and you want to be able to track them kind of things. They're durable, waterproof, weatherproof, and things like that. So this is getting beyond the you're present or an adult is always present with them concept. This is more of the you're letting them extend themselves past your household or past a constant adult presence. Now, obviously, we're beyond the age where it's okay, like when I was growing up, where the kid could just kind of go out for the day, ride his bike or her bike, and come back when the sun comes down. The world has gone past the level of comfort where they can just say, yep, go play at your friend's house and just come back whenever. I have their parents' number to call you back if I needed to. We don't trust the world like we used to in general. Some states are like that. Some neighborhoods might be like that. But in general, it is not that way anymore. So unfortunately, those other types of devices are where most people are leading to. It is a comfort thing, I think. I don't think it really provides much real safety out there, because once you separate the child from the device, you're tracking a device, not a child. Let's just keep that in mind. Okay, I do think it's a great thing if a child does get lost and needs to reach out to their parent, or a parent needs to reach out to the child. But overall, the true safety behind it is not really keeping them safe from the world. It's just really keeping them safe from getting lost. All right. So the overall true change in the world has not come to the point where really those are needed. It is just a safety mechanism from them truly getting lost. Overall, the fear of the world that has come has come due to media, has not come from any actual true rise in the types of crimes that people are afraid of happening. If it does happen, it's the same way that it's happened in the past, local known acquaintances and stuff like that. So these technologies really don't save anybody from anything. But if it makes you comfortable, go ahead and use the tethering devices if it makes you feel comfortable. I mean, they're there. It's a great technology. If my mom wanted me home and I had one of these, she could have just called me and said, hey, get home now. She wouldn't have had to wait until I got back, and I wouldn't have gotten yelled at. I guess that would have been a good thing. But, I was coming home late at night because she said, come home when the sun went down, and the sun didn't go home down till 9 o'clock at night during the summer. So it worked out for me. Now, the next thing when it comes to situational awareness is actually knowing who your kid knows. There is a lot of times now where kids don't want to talk to parents, which that's nothing new. But a lot of times the parents will still say that they want to know who their kids know, but they won't actually enforce it. There's a lot of times where, parents are almost afraid to upset their kids. It's not a crime for your kids not to like you. It's not a requirement for your kids to like you. And it won't hurt your kids to not like you. It's no skin actually off of a parent's back if your kids don't like you. They still have to listen to you. They still get their food from you. They still get their shelter from you. And if they really want to get what they want from you, they should have to answer your questions. So if they want to be able to go over their friend's house, they should tell you who their friend is, where their friend lives, who their friend's parents are, and stuff like that. Now, obviously, most kids aren't going to put up a big huff if you're like, well, I need to know the information if you want to go, and they'll just give it up freely. So just remember, knowledge is power, and the more you insist, the more they will give it to you, because eventually they'll end up being able to go over their friend's house, most likely, unless you find out there's a big issue with their friend's house. Obviously, if their friend's house is, also a drug lab or something like that, you wouldn't let them go there. But in general, if it's a friend they met at school or something like that, you'd obviously want to check with the parents, make sure that the house is, safe and that kind of stuff. But as long as you're doing your due diligence as a parent, the kid will be able to do what they want. So that's the big thing. Do your due diligence. Are the kids doing what the kids say they're doing? Are they going to where they're saying they're going? And if not, enforce the rules. If they aren't listening, they don't get to do it again. If they aren't being truthful, then you can't trust them. These are some of the situational guidelines that you have to follow as a parent for the kids to get what they want. You got that? You have to set the rules for yourself to follow in order to give your kids what they want. So you have to be self-disciplined as a parent so that you can maintain situational awareness. All right? So you have to first be available. So either yourself as an adult be available, your spouse if you have one, another adult, or again, if you have a hired babysitter, somebody who can handle, take appropriate action in emergency situations. Next, if you're using a tethering device, you choose a proper tethering device that works for your situation. And then third, you have to make sure you're being disciplined to actually follow your own set of rules when making sure you're setting the guidelines for your children when allowing them to do certain things. Now, these are age appropriate. So kind of like I was talking about in the past when we're kind of trying to set up initiative, podcast from way beginning, which by the way, this is marking my 1 year. I've been doing this for 1 year now as a podcast. So this is episode 25. Technically bi-weekly it would be 26, but I did have to take a break when we were moving. So this is 1 year doing the podcast. 26 will be 1 year and 2 weeks technically. But this has now marked my official 1 year of doing the podcast. So all of you who've been around, thank you very much. All of you who've joined me in that time, I'm glad you've joined us. But continuing on, if you are, letting them go forward and you are trying to, set an age appropriate kind of guidelines. Just like with the initiative, you have to look at what you're doing. So I'm going to take an example. Six Flags. All right. So I live in New England. So we go to Six Flags New England. We have season passes. And we have ages 11 to 3. So 11, almost 8, 5, and twin 3-year-olds. My twin 3-year-olds, when they don't listen, to make sure we can keep them under control, we strap them into their stroller. That's how we maintain situational awareness to our 3-year-olds. Some people, maybe if they're a little younger, have those little bungee backpacks. Well, we're not going to do that with twins because they'd be literally bouncing off of each other. It'd be like ping pong balls or those little paddle balls, with two of them. So we use a stroller. That's maintaining situational awareness of our 3-year-olds. We give them warnings, and for the most part, they'll listen. A lot of times the stroller is just easier for them. We don't strap them in. They get in and out kind of as they please. It's just fun for them. But if they don't listen, they get strapped in. It's got a 5-point harness. It works great. The 5-year-old situational awareness is if you don't listen, you have to either A, hold the stroller's handle or hold one of mommy and daddy's hands until we say you can let go because you're not listening. All right, and this could mean you're running off way too far or you're running around crazy and you're not listening to us when we say come back. Because sometimes it's okay, like if there's not a massive amount of people, we'll let her have her energy and bounce up and down and run around because, hey, we're at a theme park. Why not have fun and get the energy out here versus in our house? So, the 5-year-old, those are kind of some of the guidelines we set with her because she's 5. We're not going to strap her into the stroller because she's getting a little too heavy for it. The 8-year-old sometimes can get a little bit out of control, but if she gets out of control, we do you will hold this stroller, you will not let go, or we're gonna sit here and make you sit until you calm down. All right, and then the 11-year-old, it's you will have no dessert, and on the way home you're not going to be able to do X, Y, or Z. So her punishments can actually come later because she's just not listening. And we need to make sure she understands we have to maintain control. Now, the 11-year-old, I don't think we've had a big issue at Six Flags. Or, maybe we just won't let her take a ride or whatever. But usually at Six Flags, the 11-year-old, the soon-to-be 8-year-old, at least more recently, we haven't had any issues with them. When we were younger, we had to resort a little bit more to some of the similar types of issue control. For maintaining situational awareness with them. It's mostly you guys have to stay with us. You can't just go running off kind of thing. You got to stay with us. And we would always address this with them up front. And then as we go through the park, these are the things we have to do. So we would before we started going in, we're like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we have to worry about. These are our control mechanisms. You guys got to listen. Let's move forward. And then if they didn't, we implement it. That's situational awareness as a parent going into a situation with our kids that's age appropriate. Plain and simple. Now, that's a situation that's kind of like start, end. Going to a theme park, leaving a theme park. Obviously, we have the parking lot and all that other stuff too. Same part of the thing. We have to consider it. Now, day-to-day life, let's consider the house. Okay, different parents have different perspectives on this. So obviously, take your own life and your own personality and how you're going to address this, obviously, into consideration. But let's take the idea of baby proofing. Okay, now I think baby proofing is something every parent is going to do to a different level. Okay, baby proofing is just the concept of going through your house and saying, what do I think my baby's going to get into and how do I protect them? Okay. So in our house, we pretty much did gates, certain drawers in certain rooms. We would try to make sure they couldn't open, or if they could open, we took out all the stuff that they could get into and stuff like that. We didn't really deal with the kitchen because we just taught our kids not to go in the kitchen. We didn't worry about a lot of rooms because we just gated off the room entirely. So there's a lot of things that we didn't even do because we just made sure kids couldn't go in it, period, or couldn't get into it, period. Also, the rooms, we didn't do like sharp corners because we didn't either have sharp corners, um, or we were just more in tune with our kids, and we would train ourselves and them to kind of stay away from them, or we just kind of risked it, I guess. We didn't have really sharp edge furniture. It was more rounded, blunted, that kind of stuff, so we didn't really get concerned with it. And if a kid stood up and hit a rounded, blunted corner, we weren't kind of worried about it, because I guess we weren't. Now, my in-laws, they had, brick facades and stuff like that. And I know my wife lived here a little bit before me, so they made, sure to put like rubber edging on most of that kind of stuff. And that's what they did. And I'm pretty sure it is or was still here when we first moved in, because we're currently living there. As like I said, we're trying to find a bigger house with an in-law. So a lot of the things that people do for baby proofing is situational awareness. They walk through their house, they think of the things that could cause a problem, and they make a plan to fix it, change it, adjust for it. Now, that is a ongoing process, because as the child develops, changes, grows, learns, you don't always have to do the same thing. Also, as the child grows, they might learn to get around your mechanisms. Our 3-year-olds all know how, both of them, can't say all, both of them can now completely thwart pretty much any gate we put in their way. They can either open it or get over it. So there's no point in a gate for our children anymore. Tall ones, short ones, they can open them all. And unless we're literally tying them shut and raising them higher than they should go, which kind of makes them pointless anyways, because then they can try and go under them, the gates just don't do what they're supposed to. So we've decided to just take the gates out, teach the kids what they are and are not supposed to do. And for the rooms they're not supposed to go in, we got the little turn knob covers, because they haven't figured those things out yet, luckily. And that's our next step of protecting certain rooms from the 3-year-olds. And even our 5-year-old still has hard times with those, which is good because it keeps them out of some rooms still. So as you have heard, the situational awareness as a parent obviously is different than a DIYer, but it's not really different. You have to go into it understanding that it's a process that you have to go through. It's a process that you have to look at ahead of time. And it's a process that you understand has limitations, because you can go through it as a DIYer and you can go through a process check to be aware as a parent. And to be honest, something can still happen. As a DIYer, you could wear gloves, you could wear a mask, you could wear a respirator, you could wear, look at firefighters. Professional firefighters wear all this apparatus, okay? Professional firefighters, even volunteer firefighters, either way. Professional firefighters still get hurt, still die, wearing all of this protective equipment, okay? Have millions of dollars of equipment, still die, okay? As a DIYer, you could be wearing all the protective equipment in the earth and still get hurt, still have something go wrong, but you still need to go through it, because it could be what saves a finger, saves your hand, saves your eye, saves your whatever, because you wore it. Because most of the time as a DIYer, luckily we're not going to be doing these massive things that are going to cause huge damage to ourselves usually, unless you're doing, again, massive projects. But you really still need to go through the process to make sure you're doing the best possible thing, okay? And then as a parent, maintaining situational awareness, yes, is a generally natural step of life as a parent, but we always have the ability to take a breath, take a second, especially in those situations that are not normal day to day. Like going to Six Flags is not every single day. It's not our wake up and go to bed. We're always at Six Flags. But it's also our everyday changes. Like I said, baby proofing your house. Your kids are not always the same age. You need the same things. No, sometimes you need more. Sometimes you need less. As my kids grow older, they're getting more wise to the internet. I need to make sure I'm keeping on top of security and safety protocols for the internet just so that things don't happen to them and so they don't do something by mistake and mess up their computers. I mean, as a dad, okay, I want to protect them from the internet. I also want to protect their computers from them doing something stupid that's going to damage their computer because they downloaded something they're not supposed to, or they didn't know they were going to download it and it breaks their computers. I'm an IT guy. I know it happens all the time. I'm luckily good enough to make sure that their computers are protected, where even if they do, I can restore it back to before they did. That's also situational awareness. Is as my kids are getting older, I know they're probably going to do something to break their computers. I'm going to make sure that I can fix it as quickly as possible instead of figuring out who am I going to call to fix it for them. That's situational awareness, is knowing that as our family grows, there's going to be things that happen that you want to be able to fix. So take the steps to be aware that things are changing. Look at your family, look at the scenarios of what's happening in life, and how can you try and be prepared. Again, are there electronic mechanisms? Like I said, you have the tether, you have home protection devices, you have other people, you have your community that can help you out when it comes to keeping an eye on them, neighborhood watch, that kinds of things. What is it that we can do to take stock as a parent to make sure we know what is happening? Because if we don't know what's happening, then we can't best prepare for what needs to be done, or we can't best be prepared for when things do go wrong, because things will go wrong, no doubt about that. But we need to make sure we can take stock of life, take stock of our children's situations, so that we can then be prepared. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, you can obviously reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook. You can email me. All of those links are in the show notes. You can obviously find me on any podcast app, DIY Data 5. If you're watching on the app, my wife made me these wonderful shirts. She got it with the dashes, DIY Dad of 5, so it's easy for people to read. On the back, if you can see, I'm going to hopefully turn around. You can see I got the lovely temps. Time, equipment, money, passion, skills, temps. If you really have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm actually looking forward to an interview I'm going to be having coming soon with my first dad. So I'm looking for some wonderful questions for him. If you have any questions that you would want to ask who you think is the best dad. Now, I'm not saying who this dad is. I'm not saying he is the best dad, because I don't want to give this guy any, big egos or anything like that. I will just say that personally, who this dad is, I look up to. He is a dad that I have asked for advice. He's a dad that I look at his kids and I'm like, I only hope my kids turn out like his kids do. I kind of wish I turned out like some of his kids had, at least at their age. Drop me a line. Send me those questions. Again, you can find me DIY Data 5, no spaces, no dashes, on Instagram, Facebook. Email DIYData5@DIYData5.com. Just please reach out to me. Again, you can find me on YouTube, DIY Data 5, anywhere you want. Thank you, and I will see you in 2 weeks.